So let me give a warm welcome to everybody. Glad to have you here this evening. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and I think you're going to be excited once you leave. I told you in the email to bring a notepad, and so I hope you did. You're going to want to take some notes, but don't worry. There are sources where you can get all this and a lot more once we're through. But just for reference, it's always good to take notes just for your own memory. It's an exercise that helps you remember. That's all you do. So, okay, this is the first in a series that we're going to do, laying down the foundation of understanding of common law and beyond. All right, what is common law all about? How can we make it work to our advantage? How can we use it? How can we claim our authority? How can we use it to push back on the usurpers of authority? Right? There's far too many civil servants, police officers, others just roaming the streets right now. They're just harassing people who are doing nothing, and they're demanding their ID. All kinds of videos on YouTube. ID, what do you need an ID for? I'm just standing here. Okay. And so what do you do if you find yourself in that situation? Most people would just, bend the knee, bow down, and comply and volunteer their rights away, right? You don't need to give an ID to anybody unless you're being arrested, accused of a crime, right? We'll get into that a little bit later. So we're going to lay some fundamental principles down. You'll have heard of much of this before, but by putting it together in this format, I think it'll really come together and make a lot of sense for you, right? And then we can use this as a base to build off of as we go further down the road. All right. So let's just take the attitude like Steve Voss just said in his song. If you didn't hear it, he says, right here, right now, it's Independence Day. Let's take that attitude. Wherever we go, right here, right now, it's Independence Day. I'm here for Independence Day because I am independent. I am the one with authority in this country. I have that scepter of authority that God has given me, and I intend to use it. And I'm not going to let any tyrant, petty tyrant with an IQ a little bit larger than my shoe size, trying to usurp authority that he does not have. All right, now, I said that in a strong way, and we certainly don't want to be confrontational, but we certainly can be strong in defending our rights and knowing how to do that properly and taking these usurpers and pushing back, putting them back in their box of delegated authority. Okay, so we have to remember, civil servants only have the authority that we've given them. And for you to be strong in that position, you need to understand what that authority is. Where does it come from? And so that's what we're going to go over here tonight. Okay, let me read a quote to you and just put in the chat if you know who this quote is attributed to. All right, it'd be interesting to see. Quote, in America, the people govern, the people rule, and the people are sovereign. I was elected not to take power, but to give power back to the American people where it belongs. If the righteous many do not confront the wicked few, then evil will triumph. End quote. Okay. Boy, Bev is right on top of that one. Donald Trump. Good job, Bev. If I had any gold stars, I would give you one. Anyway, so yeah, that's Donald Trump. And isn't that the whole point of going to seek public office for our public servants. How many of our public servants today seek office to serve and to make this country a better place? Okay, no, they're all in it for their self-interest. So we understand that. So any study of common law really requires that you go back and study a little bit on Blackstone's commentaries, which are extensive, and the Magna Carta, right? So that's pretty much where the people had gotten fed up and said, hey, the king has gone too far. We have rights, we're going to demand our rights. And so that's where everything starts. And I'm not going to get too far into that. That's something that you probably ought to do on your own. I'm going to refer tonight, I've made a number of notes and taken excerpts from the self-governance and common law course that we offer right in the forum. Okay, so I'm going to highlight certain concepts and principles. And when you want to dig deeper on that, get the references, the annotations, the footnotes, and court cases in support, you can go to the self-governance and common law course. So that's where a lot of this will be coming from. So you all have access to that. So Thomas Jefferson told us that if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. You've heard that before. I like to revisit that because the obvious question is, how ignorant are we all? And I include myself in that category. You know, you look at our founding fathers, and by the time they were in their early 20s, they were masters of several disciplines. All they did was read and study after they were working out in the fields or whatever, work they did. They were extremely intellectual and well accomplished in matters of literature, the arts, science, political thought, philosophy. All right. And that's something that we all lack. And I know that with the current lifestyles that have been imposed upon us, finding time to do these things is the difficult thing. But I would challenge you right now up front to evaluate your activities during the day and find out how much time you could carve out from doing things that don't make a difference to doing things that would make a difference, just in your own knowledge and intellectual strength. Okay. So I think that's probably an important thing to think of. Just doing an inventory of your own use of time and perhaps reallocate that. Okay. So, I've often said before that the only ones who have a right to complain about tyranny and the lack of freedom are the ones who take personal responsibility. Let me get rid of this window. Are the ones who take responsibility to advance their knowledge and empowerment and take that upon themselves to learn how to enforce truth and justice with this fundamental understanding of the law. Okay? And see, that's what we're all lacking. And so people will bow down and comply and submit out of fear. And they only have fear because they don't have knowledge. They don't have that empowerment, right? So with knowledge and empowerment, your fear goes away. And once fear goes away, you're much more likely to stand up against someone who wants to usurp your authority. And that's really what it comes down to. Who is the authority here? Right? Some numbskull, wearing jackboots, issuing orders. asking for my ID because I'm standing on a street corner? Or me, who carries the scepter of the Lord, the scepter of dominion over this earth, understanding where all authority truly comes from and where that authority resides, which is in me, and with an understanding of our historical roots, can clearly and forcefully stand on those principles, those rights, and the things that we hold so dear. All right. But this is what we need to get to. This is where we need people to be able to get themselves en masse, not just a few here and there. So as we start this series tonight, and we're just getting started, we need to get more people involved. You know, we need to get family, friends, relatives, co-workers, people in the community, people in other groups that we're involved in. They need to be involved, whether they are able to make the live sessions, or of course, these are always being recorded and available for replay at a later date. Okay, but we need to get people to a level of knowledge and empowerment so that we can have an effect on what's going on around us. Okay. So that being the case, Thomas Jefferson told us that an enlightened citizenry is indispensable for the proper functioning of a republic. Self-government is not possible unless the citizens are educated sufficiently to enable them to exercise oversight. Who gives oversight? The boss. The boss gives oversight to what's going on the floor, where the operatives are working, right? It is therefore imperative that the nation see to it that a suitable education be provided for all of its citizens. Now, where do we get that education today? Certainly not in the public schools. Certainly not in public institutions. There are some private institutions doing a fantastic job. Hillsdale College is one that comes to mind, and we've highlighted them in our topics section. But NATF is one of those sources. All right, we want that to be known far and wide, that this is one place people can come to get education, get empowerment, get that scepter of dominion, understand who is the authority, where is the authority, where does that authority reside, and be able to stand their ground and preserve their rights. And Lord knows our rights are under attack coming from all directions, right? So it's up to the people to take back and secure the republic. Certainly the elected representatives cannot. The white knights or the white hats, they're not going to do it. They need an empowered, educated public behind them. Okay, perhaps public is a wrong choice of words, but you know what I mean. All right, the people need to be the grassroots to provide the foundation for anyone to have any impact or effect, such as the white hats. Okay. So it's only when we, the people, stand up against tyrants will we be able to return to our former status under common law. So to accomplish this, we first must be educated in the law of the land. And that's the challenge that must be met if we are to save the republic. So that's pretty clear. I think I made that point. Again, Thomas Jefferson, educate and inform the whole mass of people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of liberty. The only sure reliance. All right, so I'm making up a flyer for NATF, and it's a very simple flyer. It says, freedom is not a gift. It's a responsibility. And that's the way people need to look at it. So again, Thomas Jefferson, I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of the society, but the people themselves. And if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education. This is the true corrective of abuses of constitutional power. All right, and there's no shortage of abuses of constitutional power, are there? So, that being said, it's very clear to see that we've been led astray, I think, with a deliberate attempt to hide our history, to hide the law from our awareness, and that we just kind of fall into the de facto, which has been created for us, right? In a way that leads us on a path away from our rights, where they're lost and forgotten. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at any constitution, any state constitution, and you can. We'll take a look at where some of this authority comes from. You know, the theme of our session tonight is, by what authority? By what authority are you making those demands of me? In other words, who are you and what's your authority? What gives you authority to tell me what to do? Mr. Police Officer, Mr. Judge, Mr. School Board member, and you can go right down the list. So take a look at any state constitution, and I'll give you a couple here. Looking at Colorado, in the preamble, it says, "We, the people of Colorado, with profound reverence for the supreme ruler of the universe, in order to form a more independent and perfect government, establish justice, ensure tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution." Now that preamble says a lot, doesn't it? Right off the bat, with profound reverence for the supreme ruler of the universe, they're acknowledging God as the giver of the law. And everything emanates from that point. So we can clearly establish, based on what these preambles in the Constitution say, what it says in the Independence, a Declaration of Independence, that all law, real law, comes from God. And then when you want to talk legal stuff, a whole different world, legal being apart from the law, you're talking about all kinds of political rules and regulations that go to serve a particular agenda, that change over time, that have no mercy, that are rigid in their application, draconian in the extraction of penalties, and you could just go on. That's the alternative. So we're looking at really law being a derivative or being derived directly from God himself, the supreme ruler of the universe, whatever name you want to attach to him, versus what man can come up with. Okay? And I'm sure we all understand that already. But it's just important to revisit that and to put that in perspective and to drive that stake hard into the ground as we get started here. Okay. Here, we the people of the state of Minnesota, grateful to God for our civil and religious liberty and desiring to perpetuate its blessings and secure the same to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution. So, in both instances, what does the preamble establish? It establishes why the Constitution was created. It sets forth the parameter, the precepts, the foundational underpinnings of what the Constitution is going to accomplish. Let me review again. In Colorado, in order to form a more independent and perfect government, establish justice, ensure tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution. So those are the precepts that the Constitution is created, and authority is delegated in those constitutions to accomplish those things. So it just goes to say, using basic logic, that anything that falls outside of those purposes is unconstitutional. All right? Pure and simple. If some statute that's established by man does not meet the objective of the original Constitution on one of those precepts, it doesn't belong. Okay, so that's pretty simple. The constitutions were created for specific purposes. They delineate what those purposes are. They give you the bullet points right off the bat. And then when you want to elaborate on that and get into more detail, you can read further down the list on each one of those and get into a little bit more detail. But who was it? I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said the Constitution is the chains that will bind down mischievous men. So looking at the Declaration of Independence, it clearly recognizes that we have inalienable rights. And that's an interesting word. Some people will call it inalienable. Other peoples will use the word or pronounce it inalienable. And really, they're both correct. They're both correct with different meanings. Inalienable, the root word is what? Lien. Inalienable. If you have an inalienable right, I cannot impose myself on that right. I cannot make a claim on that right. I cannot extract anything from your right and draw it to my benefit. It's inalienable. No one can put a lien on it, a claim. Okay, so you can look at that way. The other word is inalienable. And what's the root word there? Alien, alienate. Okay, which is to separate, to draw apart, to pull apart. So I cannot separate you from your inalienable rights. They're inseparable, inalienable, and inalienable. Pose that question to a judge, see what kind of answer you get. Hey, judge, what's the difference? Boy, it's kind of fun to goof around with these guys sometimes. Because when you know your stuff, and I know many of you already do, it's kind of fun just to show how someone who wants to act big and powerful really doesn't know much of anything. That's quite often the case. Okay. So we look at legislated laws of men, which of course they change over time incessantly. They serve agendas, they serve different governments, they serve political parties, special interests, lobby groups, people willing to pay to get the legislation they need for their business, for their profits, for their markets. And legislative laws are very good at demoralizing men. Have you ever noticed that? Oh, they got these new laws and we have to do this and we have to do that. The mask mandates and the business closures and, all these new legislative things. Of course, the mandates weren't even legislative, but you get the idea what I'm trying to get at. Legislative laws have no mercy. There's no forgiveness. All right. It is what it is. Whereas with God's laws, they're the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, right? So choose one. Which law do you want to operate under? God's law or man's law? And see, that's my entire position. And it's not, I know some people are going to, start whining and complaining. Oh, Mark is getting into this religious thing again. It has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with what the constitutions and the Declaration of Independence recognize as the creator of the universe. God's law, where all of our law and our constitutions are based off of. So, like it or not, that's what it is. But back to the point, I like to operate purely in the jurisdiction of God's kingdom. I know a pastor who is living that to the nth degree. Some of you probably know who Pastor Paul Revere is and his Kingdom of Heaven Church in Oregon. He was in Oregon for a while. I think they finally chased him out of there. But he'd end up in court for driving without a license or something. And, it might be, the fifth time that he was in court on that particular issue. And they'd put in a request to see the judge privately in chambers. And so after the docket was cleared, they'd meet the judge in chambers and they'd ask the question, Judge, what interest does the state have in a non-statutory, spiritually led church? What's the interest the state has? And of course, there is none. None could be found, none could be established. There's no contract, there's no obligation. There's separation of church and state, as far as that doctrine goes. So one very important point that I need to make is a lot of these patriots are running around with documents thinking that the documents are going to do something for them, which is ridiculous because we're in a complete, total state of lawlessness. You take your documents into a courtroom and 9 times out of 10, they just ignore you and put you on the hot rails to the cell block 9. Okay. And any of you that have experience, you know what I'm talking about. They don't care about law. They don't care about your finer points, the jurisdiction that you want to bring up. We're dealing with the devil here. We're dealing with the devil. As you well know, and it's been said many times, we're not dealing with flesh and blood. We're dealing with the powers of darkness, powers and principalities. All right. And so if you can't stand on your inner God power that's within you, that relationship that you have with God, and develop that, then I truly don't see you having any kind of success at all. All right. There are situations where you might very well need a miracle to get out of a jam, and your paperwork ain't going to do it. Okay. And so that's a very strong point. We're going to stand on that very strongly with NATF, that you've got to stand on your relationship with the Lord and understand He is the ultimate authority. He is the source of authority, the source of all law. And it's that law that you're operating under, which is the trump card over anything else that anybody else could pull on you. Doesn't mean you're not going to get harassed. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get thrown in jail. Look what happened to the apostles. Okay? So having said that about developing our relationship, we also have to have the full expectation to deal with consequences and not be scared to death of being thrown in jail for a little while. People will do anything. Oh my God, whatever you do, don't throw me in jail. It's not so bad. I've been there. You know, you probably get a free bologna sandwich and an apple out of the deal. And if you're there long enough, you might get a free medical exam and dental work. Who knows? But that fear has to go away. For you to be successful, to stand in authority, you've got to stand without any fear. And people will see that in your eyes. And when they see that strength, they will be the first ones to back down. And that strength comes from within. That strength is projected from your spirit. And I know I've used that in probably malicious ways when I was a kid. Just to give you an example, when I was a kid, I grew faster than everybody else. So I was a big kid on the block. And I took advantage of it. We had this technique. We used to sneak into movie theaters. We'd sneak in the side door and there was some, little punk kid standing there as security. I'd just walk right past him and I'd slow down and look right in his eyes without saying a word. Then I'd turn and go on my way. And I just projected that authority like, I own this place. Don't bother me. And we got hit several times doing that. And even better than that, I got more stories, but I don't have time to get into those. All right. So find your inner strength. Okay. And that's really where common law comes from. You've got common law and legislative law. These are the only two fundamental traditions of law in government that really are active anywhere in the world. And each one manifests contrary ideals. Common law, aka the natural law, God's law, call it what you want, universal law, and the civil law, Roman law. Okay? The natural law rests upon justice administered by scriptural principles and presupposes and guards against the inherent imperfections of human reason. Okay? The civil law, on the other hand, justifies its methods by presupposing and appealing to man's notions of perfected reason. Okay? The common law tradition governs only a handful of countries and is fundamentally consonant with Scripture, acknowledging the divine eternality of law as the measure of all things. God's law never changes. It's eternal. It's merciful. It allows you to repent. Man's law doesn't. The civil law tradition, on the other hand, governs most modern nations and is fundamentally Babylonian, trusting human reason as the worthy measure of all things. Human reason. With all the mental illness that you see in this world, you want to trust your fate and future to human reason? My goodness, I couldn't think of anything more horrifying. So, the natural law tradition recognizes the necessity of human administration of law and government while providing safeguards against man's weaknesses, understanding that we have weaknesses. And those safeguards are having flexibility to administer it according to the circumstances, right? So, as we've said before, God's laws are the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. They serve God, they serve man. They benefit both the victim and the wrongdoer. Provide for repentance, consider mercy, build morals, and save souls, whereas legislated laws serve the status quo and can never be just. Okay? So it breaks down to really two types of law, generally speaking, in the world. There's God's law, universal law, aka common law, and there's civil law. Okay? And of course, that can be broken down many ways, but that's really what it amounts to. And just to kind of drive the stake further into the ground on this, in 1776, the Declaration of Independence was such that we covenanted with God. Thereby, we founded ourselves under the laws of nature's God, as he was described exactly in that way, if you recall, in the Declaration of Independence, whereby he gifted us with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Common law provides that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to replace the guard, get rid of the bad apples. And that's largely what we need to do. If you've been to our website, you saw the meme in the video on the homepage with the politician standing on a plank in front of his podium over an abyss, all the people standing on the other end of the plank, and one of them starting to walk off, go the other direction. What happens when everybody walks the other direction? And that's exactly what we need to do in reforming the republic. And I know there are groups out there that are setting up jural assemblies, common law courts, getting militias organized to work with the sheriff. These are all things that we'll be getting into. In fact, we're forming some very important alliances in that regard with people that are very well advanced in those areas, much more so than we are. Okay, we're going to serve a bit of a educational and organizational function to tap ourselves into what's already going on and is well advanced with other groups like the National Liberty Alliance being one, and there's a whole host of others. Okay, but that's where we're headed with NATF. All right. So the Declaration of Independence is our covenant with God. And that's where our authority comes from. That's all you need to know. Okay? So do you want to be on that side of the coin? You want to be on the civil law side. Okay? And argue those points. All right? So hopefully I've made a clear enough delineation between one set of laws and the other so that we can really start to have a clear picture. Okay? What is common law? Where does it come from? Just look at the Declaration of Independence. That's all you got to do. Now, there are some that will tell you, attorneys will tell you, well, common law is the collective opinions of res judicata, which is the Latin legal term they use for cases that are already decided. And they want to bring it back to the judiciary, the municipal corporate courts. Okay, and that can be included. Certainly can be included, but it goes far beyond that. And it's not exclusive to them. Okay. It is exclusive to the people. That's us. So bear that in mind. We are the authority with the scepter of dominion on this earth, working under the supreme creator of the universe. All right. And If I had to pick a team to be on, I know that would be the team I would pick. So it's incumbent upon us to really start to hone in on sharpening our sword of truth and understanding, developing that relationship first of all, and then empowering ourselves with the knowledge that we need to have. Okay. Couple quotes I took out of our self-governance and common law course. I want to share this with you. Any judicial reliance upon any act which is unconstitutional or not within the parameters or limits of the Constitution, in common law, the general rule is that an unconstitutional statute, though having the form and name of law, is of course in reality no law, but is wholly void and ineffective for any purpose, since its unconstitutionality dates from the time of its enactment. Nunc pro tunc, now for then. In legal contemplation, it is as inoperative as if it has never been passed. Since an unconstitutional law is void, the general principles follow that it imposes no duties, confers no rights, creates no office, bestows no power or authority on anyone, affords no protection, and justifies no acts performed under it. A void act cannot be legally consistent with a valid one. An unconstitutional law cannot operate to supersede any existing law. Indeed, insofar as the statute runs counter to the fundamental law of the land, the Constitution, it is superseded thereby. No one is bound to obey an unconstitutional law, and no courts are bound to enforce it. So imagine this. Let's dream a little bit to give us something to shoot for. What if every state, including the District of Criminals, had a group of people, NATF or otherwise, that were watching all the legislation that came out of those cesspools and picked it apart to find out which parts were not delegated with the authority to be doing what they're doing. In other words, unconstitutional. What if we had a powerful lobby group to inform the legislators to say, hey, bud, you can't do this. Remember that thing that you swore to when you raised your right hand? Yeah, your oath. Remember that? Remember the Constitution? You can't do that. What if we had powerful lobby groups of people like us, like you, me, others on the call right now tonight, coming together to analyze pending legislation, to send notices to these SOBs that, hey, they're out of line. They're abrogating their oath. They may, in fact, even be committing treason, harming the people, detrimental to their purpose for being there. And of course, we all remember that being a free, independent, self-governing body, government, we the people, we can remove people from office. What if we had the impetus to start recall? What's the word for it? Recall movements against unconstitutional legislators? You think they might start giving a second thought to some of this crap they're trying to pass? How about Biden's new $1.6 trillion? Is it 1.6 or 4.6? I can't even count that high anymore. Just astronomical, asinine, just stupid stuff. What if we had people doing that? We need to have people doing that, right? While at the same time, building up our own efforts to govern ourselves under the common law, right? So we kind of need to be working both sides of the fence, the way I see it. Because if we just let these criminals run, a lot of people are going to suffer. It's one thing to say, oh, just walk away, forget about them. But you got to think about all those who are ignorant of what's going on and who are going to suffer in the meantime. So if we're going to do anything to try and save America, whether we do or not, the way I see it, it really doesn't matter. In fact, I really don't think we will. You know, I think God has a plan, and we may not be able to change the world, but we can certainly change our world. We can certainly be standing on righteousness, shedding the light, sharing the hope and the empowerment with others, and certainly having an impact, you know, in various areas, you know, in the meantime, while we're waiting for Jesus to come back, take us out of here, hopefully. We won't get into that. I know it's controversial, but whatever your thoughts are, we need to be doing what we're doing, and what we could be doing is my point, okay, regardless of how we see the future. All right, so I had much more I wanted to get into tonight, but as always, time flies by. But let me just wrap it up this way. Make sure you get to the website, national-taskforce.org. And if you're not getting our emails, you need to be sure you're on the email list. So if you go over here to this Get Involved button, you'll see links to be sure that you're on the email list. And this is also where you can bring others to get them involved, all right, and join us and get in the loop for the announcements and the web meetings. And we're in the process of building out an extensive resource library. That's going to take some time to put together, so it's not imminent, but that's coming, and that's where you'll be able to really dig into a lot of these issues, you know, to get into the meat and potatoes of it all. Okay, so let me just make sure you're aware of that. I presume most of you have seen the new website, but that's that Get Involved page. That's where you've got links and different ways you can get active with us. Okay, so feel free to use that, share that, and you know, it's if we're going to have an impact, we need this group to grow. I mean, that's just all there is to it, and it's incumbent upon each one of us to make that happen. Okay, so put that down on your to-do list for next week. We will continue the training and start getting into some more detailed and perhaps practical applications. I wanted to get into face-to-face confrontations or interactions with public servants tonight, but we'll do that next week. So with that, let's just say a quick prayer. If you'll join me. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks and praise for the opportunity to live free as we have all of our lives, or at least a semblance of such. And we give eternal thanks for your endless blessings. We ask for your divine providence, your protection in the coming days ahead, that you'll keep us in our lights burning bright as a reflection of your love, mercy, and justice upon this world, that we may be extensions of that. So with that, we give thanks and praise. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that.
All right, folks. Well, thank you very much for being here. We'll see you next week.